Video will be looking at what Coriolis force is and its effect on the three phenomena that we see here in our planet, that is the planetary winds, the cyclones, and the ocean currents, and the gyres. Gyres are basically the water body that is formed as a result of this circular kind of a circulation in the oceans, right? And these are the ocean currents. So this is what we are going to do in this video. So let's understand what is Coriolis force. So Coriolis force has been defined as a fictional force. Now what does that mean? That although it is a force, it is a fictional force, that it does not exist in reality. Instead, it is there as a hypothetical concept to explain a certain phenomenon that is experienced or that is seen on a planet. Now we'll be looking at the phenomena that we're talking about, but before that, let's see what kind of fictional force is this Coriolis force. So we can say that this fictional or this is pseudo force. That is, again, it is a hypothetical concept. Hypothetical. In order to explain something that is happening, that this force is not there in reality, but it's a theoretical concept in order to explain a physical phenomenon on Earth. Now, what is this physical phenomenon we're talking about? See, if this is Earth, and sorry for the poor diagram over here, and this is equator, which is a low pressure zone, or equatorial low pressure belt as it is called, and suppose we have a high pressure belt here. High pressure belt, call it subtropical high pressure belt, although this is on a much higher latitude. It should be somewhere over here, but anyways, that does not matter. So what really happens is, when a wind from high pressure travels towards low pressure, this is what should be happening, right? It should be traveling in this straight direction towards the equator. But what actually happens is, we see that the wind takes a turn towards its right, right? Not towards the viewer or towards the person who is making the diagram. So this phenomenon is seen. Over here we again have a subtropical high pressure belt, and the wind, instead of moving in a straight direction, again takes a turn, this time towards its left. So what we are seeing is, there is a certain force that is acting on the wind, on the moving mass of air, that is providing this change in direction, this apparent change in direction. So what is this force which is actually creating this phenomena? Now we just saw that there is no force. The force is there only as a theoretical concept. There is no force as such which is acting on the mass of air. So how do we explain this phenomena? Now, in order to understand this, we need to look at a concept in physics, right? Physics. This has to do with rotational dynamics and moment of inertia. Dynamics and moment of inertia. These are the two concepts we'll be using in order to understand what Coriolis force is. Moment of inertia. Now, before we go on and see this phenomena taking place on the Earth, let's look at a wheel of a bicycle. Okay, bicycle wheel. And so this is the center, and these are the spokes of the wheel. Right, we'll have just 4 spokes. Okay. Now what I'm trying to say over here is, in one rotation of the wheel, one complete rotation of the wheel, let's take this point as A, the point just near the tire, that is the rubber tube, and we take a medium point B and the point just near the center C. Now each point, when it's doing a full circle, the point A is moving like this, right, and doing a full circle. When the wheel takes one rotation, point B is moving like this, and point C is moving in a smaller circle. Now what we are seeing is, this point A is covering a larger distance. We can very well see from the diagram that the distance that A has covered is equal to 2 pi r, and this radius is much bigger. Suppose we call this 10 centimeters, so this becomes 20 pi centimeters. B is covering a smaller circumference, a smaller distance. That means B is doing what? 2 pi, we call this 5 centimeters, so this becomes 10 pi centimeters within one rotation, right? and C is doing the shortest bit of distance covering within one rotation. So 2 pi and radius be 1 centimeter. So this is what 2 pi centimeters. So what we are seeing is, as we are moving away from the center, the particle on the the particle on the spoke is doing a larger circle and is covering a greater distance. Point at the center is doing nothing; it's remaining static. And as we are keeping on increasing our distance from the center, the particles are having an increasing circumference of the circle they are creating while they are rotating in one circle, right? Okay. So we know that A has covered a larger distance, B has covered a smaller, and C has covered the smallest. Now let's look at the time period of their whole completion of one circle. Now we see that when the bicycle wheel rotates one complete round, every point has done a full circle, right? Point A, point B, and again point C. However, the time they have taken in order to cover this whole circle, in whichever circle they are in, the time is same, because the bicycle wheel is taking, the time period of course is same, because it's not different parts of the bicycle wheel are not doing different journeys, rather they are staying compactly in one place. So although they are covering different distances, yet they are doing this in the same time period. Okay, what does that mean? That means that A has a larger speed, B has a smaller speed, and C has the smallest speed. So it's not just the distances they are covering the distances at a higher velocities as well. A has the highest, B has the second highest, and C has the lowest velocity. Now let's extrapolate this concept on Earth. So suppose over here we have our Earth, and say this is the 0-degree equator, and this is 90-degree over here, and this is let's do the 60, and this is somewhere near the poles, right? So point on the equator when the Earth is doing one complete rotation. Okay, point on the equator is covering a much larger distance, because as you can see the latitude here is larger and it is covering a much larger circumference. Okay, when the Earth is doing one full circle, compared to this, the point over here is doing a small circle, which is completely and easily apparent, and over here we have the smallest circle, and somewhere on the pole we will have almost 0-degree or zero circumference of the circle created, that is not rotating. So what we are seeing here is that each point has a different rotational velocity depending upon the function of the latitude in which it is placed, right? Latitude or parallels of meridian. At the equator we have the high speed, and as we are increasing our latitude both in the north and the southern hemisphere, so in this is northern hemisphere of course, and this southern, as we are increasing our latitudes, going towards high latitudes, so the circle created becomes smaller, and the velocity of the particle also becomes smaller. And this is the same logic being applied here as we did to the cycle wheel. Okay, now that this is established, let's look at how this different rotational speed affects the movement of winds. We'll create a fresh diagram here. So this is Earth again, and say over here we have Buenos Aires, Argentina, and this is equator. We have suppose I am not able to find any point which is like on the equator somewhere directly above Buenos Aires, say somewhere in Mexico, I believe. Okay, Mexico or Caribbeans. Anyway, that is not relevant here. So equator is low pressure, this is high pressure. Now the wind should be moving like this, but does not. Now now we'll incorporate the concept that we just learned earlier. That is, Buenos Aires is having a slow rotational velocity. So this particle over here is having a slow rotational velocity, and the region here at the equator is having a high rotational velocity. So the wind over here, which will be moving onto this region, has the same rotational velocity as Buenos Aires. Now this is where we apply moment of inertia, because say Moment of inertia is nothing but it means that suppose you're inside a train and the train is moving at 60 kmph. That means you are also, by virtue of you being inside the train, you are also traveling at the same speed. So your body has acquired that speed, right? In case the train were to stop suddenly and come to a grinding halt at 0 kmph, now that it has become completely stationary, you will be jerked forward at this speed, 60 kmph, and there will be some kind of an accident that you will bang yourself into something. So this is what is happening. So when the wind leaves Buenos Aires, it has the same rotational velocity as Buenos Aires. So it is moving ahead in this direction, but also with the rotational velocity. And rotation is where it is going from east to west, right? East to west. So by the time the wind has reached this point, Mexico, where would Mexico be? Mexico is having a higher rotational velocity. So Mexico would be somewhere over here, right? And Buenos Aires would also be somewhere here. But the wind, what would happen to the wind? The wind would now seem to be over here. Because why? Because this one had a higher rotational velocity compared to the wind over here. So Mexico would have moved forward and the actual direction of the wind would become like this, somewhat like this. I hope I have explained this. I don't think so I have explained it as clearly, but this is how the concept is. Now we look at its application on planetary wind, which by now must have become very clear. The planetary winds, sorry about that. Okay. So let's draw a huge earth. Okay. Now we'll only be going into the northern hemisphere, because otherwise it will become too messed up. This diagram. It is the equatorial low pressure belt. Okay, we have subtropical high pressure belt, and we have temperate low pressure belt, and we have high pressure, polar high pressure. Right. So the point which is trying to move from high pressure to low pressure over here would move towards its right. Now we'll have to apply the same concept in order to understand that. By the time this equator, this wind which has the rotational velocity of this is supposed to reach here, the equator would have moved forward along with this point. So although they are remaining aligned, but the wind becomes out of configuration because of its different rotational velocity. That's it. Now Farrell's law. Now easy way to understand this is Farrell's law, which is nothing but a generalization of this phenomena happening. You say that in the northern hemisphere, the wind tends to move towards its right, and the two key point here, two important points here are its and right. So the direction it takes a turn is towards its right. In the southern hemisphere, this is opposite, towards its left, right? Its is the wind's left, right? Again, from high pressure to say low pressure. Okay, so we'll be having this movement from high pressure to low pressure again. So instead of the the wind going like this, the wind will be going like this. Okay, and again applying the same concept over here, we'll have a movement from high pressure to the low pressure. So the wind will be somewhat, hold on a second, this is very close, and it will be like this. So this is Farrell's law. So as we keep on increasing our distances, some other fact that we need to know, as we keep increasing our latitudes, or as we keep going higher, this Coriolis force increases, so there is greater deflection. Secondly, at higher speeds, not the rotational speed but the speed of the wind, or say the aircraft, at high speed this deflection is again more. It's more. So what I'm trying to say is, when you're moving from 0 to 30 degree at a given speed, the deflection would not be as severe as it would be when you move from 30 to 60 degree. So that's about the planetary winds and Coriolis force. Now we'll look at its effect on the cyclones, and I hope I get this right this time. So cyclones. Again, cyclones are what? Areas of low pressure surrounded by high pressure wind systems. Right? So this is a cyclone. So this low pressure and the winds are accumulating, trying to come and fulfill this area of low pressure. But this low pressure remains intact, right? And as long as this low pressure is there, the cyclone would remain. And once the winds fill in, so high pressure winds from high pressure region, once they reach this area, this low pressure would cease to exist and the cyclone would be gone. But this does not happen. And why is this? So we have a low pressure over here. Now the winds from the low pressure is created where? In generally not at the equator but in the tropical regions. And this is because this is where we have the maximum amount of sun and the maximum amount of heat. We don't have low pressure cyclone events happening at the polar or the temperate regions, right? So if this is low pressure somewhere in the tropical region, so the high pressure winds are going to come from this from the northern hemisphere, coming from the polar region, right? Okay, just undo this diagram and consider this with the body of the. So now a wind is coming from this one, from the high latitudes, and now we'll apply Ferrel's law and the Coriolis force. This wind will take a turn towards its right, so this is where it goes. Instead of going like this, again the wind coming from the southern hemisphere, what will happen to it? It will take a turn towards its left. So similarly, this is what is going to happen to other winds as well. So this event will continue on happening, and what we're seeing is that this cyclone is forming with rotating winds. And what is the direction of the cyclone now? This is counterclockwise. So the direction of the cyclone in the northern hemisphere is decided by nothing but the Coriolis force itself. Right, there is no rocket science behind it. Now let's look at the ocean currents and the gyres. Ocean currents and gyres. Again, as we know that ocean currents are actually a product of what? The planetary winds themselves. Right? So when we see, suppose I'm going to do a very bad diagram of America, the Baja Peninsula or something, and okay, and suppose this is the Gulf Stream, Gulf of Mexico. Over we have Hudson Bay. Okay, whatever. How is this happening? Okay. Alright. And this is somewhere in the equator over here, 0 degree. So we see that the Gulf Stream over here is taking a turn towards its right. Now the planetary winds in the northern hemisphere, instead of moving like this, they also tend to take a turn towards their right. Okay, so this is what is happening. Now, one of the things that we need to know over here is that the ocean currents are not just determined by the planetary winds, but also the difference between salinity and also the temperature differences. So when the Gulf Stream, which is moving from equatorial, this one, and the water here must be fresh because of rain, and because equator we have daily 4 o'clock showers, and also the water here must be warm and less dense, right? So of course there is an apparent movement of the water from this region to the polar region. Okay, so that is what is happening, and so the driving force, which is the planetary winds, is actually determining the direction of this ocean current, the Gulf Stream, right? Again, we'll see that the North Atlantic drift is again taking a turn towards its right. So again, this is nothing but effect of the Coriolis force. Coriolis force is also actually happening, the water particles. Suppose I'll draw a fresh diagram over here. concept that we apply to the winds can also be applied to the water particles. Now over here we'll look at South America. Okay? South America. So the Peru current moves from this region, warm to cold, right? This is Peru current. So this is somewhere at a lower latitude compared to this one over here, right? This must be around what, 20 or 30 degree, I'm not sure, somewhere around that. So the rotational speed over here must be high. Rotational speed of this, so the rotational speed with which this water particle, I mean this whole thing has started moving, must be high as compared to the region over here where they must be having a lower velocity, and this must be 60 or 70 degrees something, or maybe higher. So this must be high. As a result, what would happen? This would, I mean, before the particle reaches here, this ocean current would have rotated more. That is, towards when the Earth is rotating from east to west, this particle would not, or this region, this region would not have traveled as far in this direction as this body of water, which had the rotational speed, whose rotational speed was higher because of it being in the lower latitudes. So this is what is happening. Now we'll look at gyres. We understood how are the ocean currents, how are they moving, and in which direction, how are their direction being determined, right? So again, so this is Alaska, this is Baja Peninsula, and this is Mexico. So we have Gulf Stream, so we have Hudson Bay, so this is that, and suppose this is Greenland, and say this is Europe. Okay, now this is one of the examples over here of an oceanic gyre. So over here we have the north equatorial current, or say it is in fact moving like this. Okay, from here we'll be having the Gulf Stream taking a turn towards its right, Gulf Stream, and from here we'll be having the Canary current, which is taking a turn towards its left, because of, again, the same phenomena. Sorry, I guess this is how it is happening. It must take a turn towards its left in order for the circle to complete. The Canary current. So this, and over here we'll have the North Atlantic drift. So this whole circle is being completed, right? And this is a gyre. We can see that this is clockwise. Courtesy Coriolis force, which is nothing but a frictional force explained by the different rotational velocities of different regions on the Earth. Regions.